All right, so welcome everybody. We're going to look at co-creative script today as part of the ongoing series of co-creative TA workshops, which is a program that is running through till about October. So we are in the early stages. We're doing workshops on the basics of co-creativity. Then we're going to look at the more complex models. And then we're going to look at how we use it in practice in each of the fields. And then towards the end of the series, we're going to be looking at the meta perspective of co-creative script. So it's quite a lengthy program over a long period. And Traian and myself are part of the bigger team that delivers it with Keith Tudor and Graham Summers. So Traian can introduce himself. So I've been using co-creativity for lots of years. I run a training program in the UK, organisational educational fields, and I do quite a lot of work internationally as well. Well, in Russia and Ukraine, but not much happening at the moment, obviously, which is quite difficult when we have trainees in both Russia and Ukraine. So it's difficult at the minute with them, as you can expect. So yeah, so we've got a plan for today. So we'll introduce you to that in a few minutes.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. I was smiling because you said we have a plan, and let's see how we update the plan all together as we move along, like we always do. Yeah, I'm part of the team that joined to facilitate these workshops on co-creativity. I'm a big fan of co-creativity, and I think I'm a big fan also because it explains some of the things that I was doing in my practice prior to knowing that this falls under the principles of co-creative TA. And actually, Paul was the one who introduced this chapter in my own professional life more overtly quite a few years back. So I'm a PTSTA in the organizational field. I work as an HR director in a large multinational company, and I do training and supervision on the side in my more TA role. Yeah, I'm passionate about co-creativity because I think it brings a lot of what we need to work through the complexities of the life that we're seeing around us these days. And I think it also updated TA as a way of working, as a model, as a philosophy to the more present days of our lives. So for me, this is more of a technical part of it, or the principles behind it. It also allows a deeper updating of TA. That's at least from my perspective. So, Paul, how about we do a roundtable for all of you to say hello, say a few words, whatever you want to share, and then we'll move along. And anybody can start, of course.
So should we'll to make it easier, we'll do it in the order that people happen to be on my screen. Yeah, and I'll give you a notice. So Sandra first, and then Mary.
Hello, everyone. How am I today? Feeling rather under the weather, if I'm honest. Cold, not COVID. And I'm really excited to be here. I'm relatively new to TA. I'm in my first year of education TA, and I'm even newer to co-creative, and yet it's a concept, a philosophy that excites me. So yes, thank you.
Thanks, Mary, and then Chidel.
Hi everyone, I'm Mary. Yeah, like you, Sandra, I'm my first year of study of TA, and I'm just very much opening myself to different ideas and different notions. And this is I keep hearing of co-creative. It keeps popping up. I'm curious. So this is my very first swim in the co-creative waters. So thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. So Jill and then Sparkles.
So my name is Shadell. If you stop and think about it, it'll be difficult. If you run at it, it's much easier to say. I'm a third year student in Transaction Analysis Cymru. I am writing my diploma pieces. And so one of the main questions I have is, what kind of a therapist am I? I believe I'm a co-creative therapist. And I only fell across the fact that this training was on very recently. So I'm going to be reading watching the backdated ones. And I'm really pleased that you're doing this. So thank you very much. I'm in clinical practice. I've done my 200 hours, woohoo! And I love this work. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Jill. Sparkles and then Amy.
Hi, so I'm study at Transactional Analysis Cymru with Shadell. I'm in my year 4. I've done my diploma and I'm in practice now. And I want to do my CTA. So I'm doing one of my first section D essays at the moment, and I wanted to really get much more of a grasp of the theory behind co-creative. I like the idea, but some bits I'm still struggling with not using so much in the child ego state. So, but I love the idea of the integrated adult. So I'm wanting to see how it works in the room a bit more, so that I can get my head around the theories and things. So, thank you.
Right. Well, hopefully it'll work. Yeah. So Amy, then Sandra.
Hi guys, I've been thoroughly enjoying this program. I think it's fabulous to be able to bring the book alive, so to speak. Like Shadell, I'm currently writing my diploma, so I'm really thinking about who I am. And it's bizarrely only just come to mind that after 2.5 years in a group whose principles are co-creative TA, how much of that is actually almost, blended into how I am in the therapy room with my clients. So I'm exploring it now from a different angle, if that makes sense, and trying to make sense of it at the same time. So lovely to be here with you all.
Thanks, Amy. Sandra, then Sarah.
Hi, I'm in private practice. I did my diploma a few years ago and I'm writing my CTA now. I'm also enjoying these. There's a number I've not been able to get to, but I'm catching them up on the recordings. And when I can, I'm certainly here because I'm loving this. It feels like a really nourishing opportunity for you, Carter. So thank you for doing this.
Thank you. Sarah, then Stephen.
Yeah, I am a third year student. Not quite ready to start writing anything like my diploma pieces, but that's okay. Last year I actually missed the co-creative weekend at college, so I feel like I'm coming in blind, and I didn't appreciate that there were previous recordings, so I'm quite excited to look those up. I may have to ask somebody to signpost me towards them, but yeah, I'm really looking forward to today.
Right, thanks, Sarah. So Stephen and then Neil.
Hi, sorry, I forgot I was muted. I'm Stephen. I've been qualified and in practice for 2 years, so I'm quite new in therapy, I guess. I've come across co-creative therapy. I don't know an awful lot about it. I guess I just want to know a little bit more.
Okay, great. Neil, then Robert.
Hello, yeah, I finished training a couple of years ago and I'm now in private practice. I don't really know anything about co-creative. I intended to review those videos that you mentioned, but I've been too busy this week. So that's on my to-do list after this, but I'm very much looking forward to learning more about it.
Okay. Thanks, Neil. Robert, then Paul.
Hi there. I'm in my second year of training. I really like the co-creative theory. I've read up quite a lot about it in the past. However, I suppose I'm not quite sure how it works in practice. So that's the thing that I kind of wonder what happens in the therapy room a bit more. That's what my main interest is.
Thanks, Robert. So Paul and then Hazel.
Hi everyone. Yeah, I'm Paul. I work currently in my third year studying at the Iron Mill College in Exeter. Yeah, just really interested in the co-creative side of what we do. And I stumbled across this and was really interested in it. So I thought it fitted in with my diary. So yeah, I thought great. Really good to hear that there's some recordings as well for the previous stuff that you mentioned, because I know you mentioned that this was a series, so that's really good to know. And yeah, just want to learn more about the co-creative side of things. Yeah.
Thanks, Paul. Hazel.
Hi, so I'm Hazel and I'm here for purely selfish reasons. I've recently given up work, so I don't have any Zoom meetings to attend during the day. And I have been looking at these covetously, thinking I can't get to them because I'm full-time working. So this first week off and I'm here, so I'm going to listen to the recordings. I like the co-creative way of working. I really like the integrated adult idea. I'm a third year student. I am already starting to look at writing my CTA whilst I'm not working. That's one of the reasons I've given up full-time work, but I've got a way to go yet. But yeah, really, really looking forward to today.
Okay, thanks, Hazel. Grace, and then Julianne. You're muted, Grace.
Sorry, I couldn't see the mute button then. I'm Grace and I'm in my second year studying at Bristol. I don't know anything at all about co-creative TA. I've heard the name, it's popped up quite a lot, and then this came through on an email and I thought it looked interesting. So I'm also planning to go back and look at the videos and maybe buy the book. So looking forward to this.
Right, thanks, Grace. Julianne.
Hi, yeah, I've not heard of co-creative TA either, so this is really new for me. I'm 1 year in private practice. I did my diploma last year, so really happy that this came up, and I can learn more. And
All right, thanks, Julie. Okay, so Traian.
Yeah, I think it's worth. Paul, I think it's worth covering some of the basic principles of co-creative TA, because I've been hearing different levels of usage or comprehension of the theory itself. So how about if you share that? Okay, great. And we can also touch on the contract. This is TA, so contract is important, right? Do you want to start with the first one?
Yeah, so there are 4 principles, 3 that Tudor and Summers generated back in 2000, and then I added the 4th one 2 years ago. So that the first one, first principle is we-ness, which is, what can you call it? It's more than you and me. So it's like 1 and 1 equals 2.5. So it's about, if we are in we-ness, we are non-defensive. We're striving for intimacy, and we are being supportive of each other. So, and we share our resources, and we get more out than if we were just working on our own, or doing things on our own.
Yeah, I think I'd add to that also this idea that you might come across in co-creativity, which is from autonomy to homonomy. The homonomy is very much linked to we-ness. So this idea of working together towards the common good. And as Paul, as you've mentioned, incorporating also the relationship and also the context in our frame of reference whenever we work or interact with the world around us. And the second principle is shared and very important, not equal responsibility, which changes a lot the way, even our intentions in the way we interact either with clients or colleagues, working or behaving from a co-creative frame of reference. And the not equal bit is important because this is not, free for all as an approach perhaps, or as a mindset. But what's important is to emphasize the shared bit of our accountability, of our responsibility. And this changes quite a lot the way we invite the ones that we work with to be part of the change, part of the work that we do together. Paul, anything you'd add here?
Yeah, I think I would add that the way I look at it is the relationship that we generate. So I look at it in terms of one of the things that Tudor and Summers talked about in the original article was field theory. So when we come together in twos in a client therapist setting or a group setting in an organization or in a school, we create a relational field between all the people in the room, and that field, certainly in co-creative TA, that field has its own energy. So how we act and how we share and how we interact with one another impacts on that field, that relational field. So it's the relationship that's really that is important, and the relationship changes when we share the responsibility for it. The third aspect is present-centeredness, which very much links into Tudor's integrating adults. And it's about being in the here and now, not being in our what we would call child or parent ego states in Bernian TA. So it means that we are present-centered and not past-centered. And with the integrating adult perspective, it means that we will be in contact with our past and aware of the influences and the defensiveness that comes from our past, either from our own past or from our introjects of other people.
Yeah, and the present-centeredness bit, you might also look at it as a dynamic state of being, just like the integrating adult is an ever-changing, ever-evolving ego state, we would call it. The present-centeredness is also similar to that. So it's not fixed, and it's something we are constantly aware of. And if you look at part of the writings of Byrne around awareness, because that's the link that you might make between present-centeredness and the writing of Byrne on awareness, that at times felt more static, more deterministic, and this is a key difference when we look at co-creativity from that perspective. The mutual positive regard, and Paul, you've added this to the principles. It can easily link to okayness. We're okay, you're okay, the environment is okay, and so on. The only richness or the extra richness that I would add to the mutual positive regard is that that's an outcome of the other three that we've talked about. So when we are aware of the winners, when we are aware of the shared responsibility that we're having, and we're aiming for present-centeredness, the mutual positive regard is almost a natural outcome of it. And this idea of mutuality makes me also equally available, for example, for vulnerability and for being there and for opening up and basically living all the other three principles. Because I've been hearing when we were going around, we were doing the roundtable, how are we applying co-creativity in our work? Where first of all, it's what's the place we're coming from or we're being in when we're working with clients and with different people that we're engaging with. How are we engaging with our environment and context? And that's the first bit of working with co-creativity. Paul?
Yeah, I think for me, what this brings in, it nails the okayness that was implicit in what Tudor and Summers talked about. But it's more than okayness, because okayness of itself, it can be quite benign. Yeah. Whereas when you think about what the writings of Carl Rogers, he introduced the concept of unconditional positive regard, which is a much more positive aspect of what's going on in the relationship. And I think one thing that we often forget is how much we discount ourselves. And the mutual positive regard means that not do we interact with others with positive regard about them, we acknowledge our positive aspects, and we don't discount our skills and strengths, and we don't put ourselves last. Yeah. So we're not defensive about defending us ourselves. So it's about self-confidence and being positive about ourselves, because when we get on to a bit more into the session, we talk about script. There are positive aspects to our script, not only negative aspects. And when we discount things, we often discount them because we're not properly acknowledging the positive aspects of ourselves, the bits that we would like to celebrate.
Mm-hmm.
So, should we, any questions, any comments?
Anything that arises for you from these principles before we move on to the co-creative learning contract?
And if not, that's okay. We just want it. We're conscious that some people join without much information about co-creative TA, so we always want to make sure that everybody's got a firm basis of the basic tenets. So, should we carry on and look at how we apply it?
Yeah, sure.
Because when Tudor and Summers wrote the initial article, they wrote it from a psychotherapeutic perspective between a therapist and client. And obviously within the therapeutic sessions, there is group therapy. And in an organizational educational context, it's not usually one-to-one. It's with groups and organizations. So this is a co-creative learning contract that I developed, and is in the TAJ article that I wrote to show how you would use co-creativity in a learning context. And this today is, of course, a learning context. So, and co-creativity is challenging because it's not what we normally do. Because if we're being co-creative, we're non-defensive, and most of our time we spend from a defensive position. So being co-creative can be very challenging. So the first bit about we-ness is that a co-creative learning contract is that we work and learn together. And that implies adult to adult transactions. And you take as much responsibility for learning from this session as Traian and I do, in terms of supporting the learning. So the more you input into this session, the more you learn. The less defensive you are, the more that you learn. The more that you contribute and join in, the more you will learn. Traian?
Yeah, and touching on the present centeredness bit, we will learn in the present, noticing and accounting for past experiences that might get in the way in our learning or being present. And noticing and accounting for past experiences is really important here, because it's not about discounting them, it's not about leaving them at the door. It's about noticing and inviting them to be in the moment with us and finding and having options to deal with what comes. And that's the learning contract invitation. And last but not least, we will treat ourselves and others with respect and positive mutual regard. Again, coming back to the mutuality of taking care also of ourselves in the process.
So would a sort of personal example be, I am somebody who, from the very beginning of my learning journey, and this is my script stuff as well, come from a very, I'm not good enough, I'm stupid. At the beginning of my learning, most of my questions would start with, this is probably a stupid question, but, and so kind of, for me, in this environment, in the co-creative setting, I have to sort of acknowledge that and just say hi. Did that make any sense? Oh God.
Yes.
Does.
It does, Sarah. And it takes courage, Sarah, so well done.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say something similar. I'm dyslexic and I always come with a fear of I'm not going to be able to read it quick enough. I'm not going to take it in. And actually what was really reassuring is your first thing you've put up is a sans serif font that makes it so easy to read. So I also had that process of, am I going to struggle to read and understand? And when you said be aware of it, and I was like, yeah, there it is. And I never acknowledge it. I just sit with the fear of, I'm going to get stuck somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have that fear as well. I'm also dyslexic, and writing and listening is not my best qualities. And I wanted to get as much down as possible before you got on to the next part so that I was ready. And so, yeah, just being aware of that, I think, is really good for me.
And it's also ways of having the things recorded. I too am dyslexic and have other neurodiverse things going on. So having these recorded means that if I get stuck and I think, well, what on earth was that? I can come back and do it again. And I really appreciate that.
Will you be sharing the slides at all?
We can't. If they're requested, then we send them out afterwards. So yeah, okay. So we'll send them out to everybody.
Oh yeah, sorry. I just wanted to say that.
Just a minute, Paul. No saying you sorry.
Okay. Okay. So thanks, Sarah, for sharing what you did, because I myself suffer from a certain amount of educational trauma, and it really kind of yeah, it's really evident in a group situation. One of my things from being in school was not wanting to put my hand up, not wanting to look stupid, and that really plays out for me in my training and in like a group situation like this. So it's really helpful to hear that, you know, other people you know, have similar experiences.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things I struggle with and still struggle with is asking for help. And sort of say, yeah, I don't get it, sorry, can we just... So I will do better today. I'll try.
So just to share a quick situation, if we've got time, we were training at the weekend and I asked a question, and the thought process that went into before I asked that question was quite long, because I felt it was a stupid question, and the response I got, not intentionally, was, you know, that was a stupid question, not intentionally from anybody, but there was a bit of, you know, something happened in that moment where it dragged me back to a place in my younger years where I would have felt shame about putting my hand up and asking something. So yeah, it's really good to notice those kind of experiences, I think.
Yeah, a lot of important sharing. And Sarah, you are good. You will not do better, because you know this is how it plays out a bit. So I'm thankful you're opening up, many of you, because this is the simplicity and the complexity behind these principles. And Paul, when you were sharing what's happening when you want to talk, you know, I think these principles also it's an invitation to bring the psychological level at a social level, because what we've been hearing in the last few minutes is so many commonalities going on, you know, happening in so many minds, in so many people in this present moment. So what a joy to open up and bring this and have a discussion and find an alternative and see how it is to do it differently. So great example of working co-creativity, of being in that or living those principles. Okay. Paul, you wanted to say something, or?
No, I was just waiting for you to finish and carry on with the plan.
Yes, we do have a plan, so let's carry on.
Can I ask a very practical question?
Sure.
Will we be having a short tea break at any point, and what time will that be? Because I've had a lot of coffee this morning.
We will, and the plan is to do that about half time. So in about 45 minutes, I would say.
If I slip off, it's because I can't wait.
That's okay. That's
not of course, not at all. And that's equally valid for all of us. Okay, good. Thanks for asking. So we will have a short break, yes. So carrying on with the plan. So Paul, how about we talk a bit about what we understand about co-creative script, and then we can invite the rest to do the same.
Yeah. Let me just check whether I've got the script matrix up or not. Do you want to start off, Traian, and I'll just find the script matrix.
Sure, and I have it.
Oh, go on then. You do it.
Do you want to share it now? Do you want to link it?
Yeah, I think if we put it up, then we can talk around it.
Oh, okay. Nice, okay. If that resonates with what you want to say, cool. Yeah, sure.
Oh, not that one, Traian. The other one.
Just 1 second. Oh, the co-creative script.
Yeah.
Not the script Felix. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think actually this is good. Okay.
So a co-creative script matrix, or the co-creative script that Tudor and Summers talk about, is quite different to traditional views of script. Burns' view of script is that you generate your script from your early years, and then by the time you got to 7, you've got your script and you've got to live with it. Yeah, it's there and you can address it maybe, but it ain't really going to change. When Steiner started writing more about scripts, scripts people live, he did it with the big people, the parents, giving the script to the child. Yeah. So it was a similar diagram to this, but the child was at the bottom and the arrows were pointing downwards towards the child. So it was on the basis that these horrible parents gave us our script, yeah, and we didn't have a choice. When Julie Hay wrote about script, she turned it the other way around and put the child at the top, and that the parents supported the child to generate a script in a positive way. And of course, neither of them are correct, because we actually make our own sense of our experiences when we're small. We have Did you say?
Sorry, I interrupted you. Sorry.
No, it's okay. Do you want to say something?
I'm sorry. I was passionate about the fact that we make choices.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Byrne wrote about twins, didn't he? A little story about twins who were brought up together, and the father said to them that they would end up in a mental institution, and one ended up as a patient and one as a therapist. So it's the meaning that we make of our experiences as children, and the context and the frame of reference that we've already developed, as to whether we accept the injunctions that we are offered from our parents, either directly or indirectly, but through ulteriors. And if we read some of the other TA writers like John McNeill, when we have an experience and we have a need not met, we can either go to a response that is accepting of it, or we can go to a defiant response. So the same experience for two children, depending on where they're at the time and the context, they can make very different conclusions from it. I have a colleague who has twin sons, and he often relates the story about his two young boys at 2 years old, 2.5, watching a video, and he went to make a cup of tea, and he told the boys, "Don't touch the TV." Yeah, and went out the room to make a cuppa, and as he was coming back, he watched one of the boys sit there with his arms folded and watching the DVD, and the other one snuck up and changed the channel. So they both had choices, and they made different choices. So we do have choices, and the Children's Summer's co-creative script shows that we have choices. Not only do we have choices when we develop our script, but what we choose to do impacts on the big people. And everybody, all of you guys who are parents or have got nephews or nieces, you know that especially when you have kids, they have a phenomenal influence on us. Our life changes forever. We can't do what we used to do. Priorities change, yeah.
If we use sort of twins as an example of two people who potentially are being raised in the same environment, the same parenting style, the same amount of love and affection and everything else, has anybody figured out what drives children to interpret those messages differently and make those different choices?
So even though they are children, and even though they're twins and they're brought up in the same way with the same parents in the same home, they don't experience everything in the same way. So the children are individuals, and their individual experiences will be different. Yeah. For whatever reason, they have different toys, so they're exposed to different parts of the environment. And it's just, I suppose it's like a snowball rolling down a hill. You know, some snowballs gather more snow, and some snowballs gather less. Some snowballs get dirty because they go through a dirty patch of snow, others don't. So it just builds up, and a bit like if you think about the bent penny syndrome that Byrne talked about, it depends where the bent penny comes from. Oppositely, if we think about script as being a healthy process and a developmental process, what are the good things that we encounter, that we remember, and enables us to be more positive than negative? So it is the sense that we make of our experiences.
Yeah,
I would. Oh, go ahead.
I was just thinking that, you know, we tend to think about the kind of big experiences in our life as being the most important things. And these are the things, you know, that maybe a pair of twins, you know, you might think to yourself, well, you know, they're both subject to these big experiences in common, but we kind of forget about these micro experiences. And really, you know, the importance of micro experiences, I think it is something to consider.
Yeah, thanks, Robert. Go ahead. I don't see you all, so I don't know who's. Okay, go, Mary.
Mary, hi. I find this model really difficult. What I find difficult about it is, well, from my own experience in therapy, if my therapist uses the word decisional, particularly about my childhood, I probably just go into script. I feel somatically very deeply, and I figured it out. I go right round the mini script to despairer, bang, bang, bang. And I feel, you don't understand me. You're not on my wavelength. You don't get it. And then there's a wall between us that can last the rest of the session. And I feel it's almost like, yes, you could call it a decision if you're between the devil and the deep blue sea. But I prefer to see it as a concession. It's a decision you make under duress. Perhaps if you're not given healthy options, you've got option A that's bad, or you've got option B that's a little less bad. It's not really a decision you would choose to make. It's one you have to make. And I find the model, it doesn't, particularly in child and adult relationships, it doesn't account for the inequality of power and control. The little child, like the parents, yes, we do influence one another, of course, but the child, to grow and survive and move into the world, has to learn from those around it. Those parents, they don't have to, because they already have all their learning, and they have the power and control.
There are, Mary, you wanted to say more?
Just that.
Go ahead.
I was just going to agree in some ways. I find the arrows going both ways a bit disconcerting, because some parents just, well, mine in particular, and a client that I'm working with at the moment, her parent, they don't seem to be affected by me or by my client. They go in their own sweet merry way, and you have to tag along. So I do find the two-way arrows quite an interesting concept.
Yes, and there are some aspects here that I think link back to the principles of co-creativity. So coming back to the idea of twins, I think genes can also play a role, and context very much so. So when we talk about winners, that impacts the way they interpret reality. And as we see also in more classical TA theory, the decisions that we made growing up were the best decisions that we could make in that given context for our well-being and survival, no matter how that context is. So I would add to when looking at this model, to look at also as a permission and potency of actually saying, well, I was actually brilliant back then doing the things that I did back then. And it was also, I think it's an invitation to account for the fact that there was decision-making happening. It's the difference between the more classical script model is that there was even there a mutuality that can be present now also when we are adults, when we have different powers, where the power dynamics are very different. So we move on from a belief that that was deterministic and given to us to a different belief, which is it was the best thing that we could ever do for ourselves in that moment. And now we do have more options. And the mutuality of it and the shared responsibility, so the arrows going both directions, imagine it more as a circle that goes around, around, around. So it's a mutual influencing happening all the time. And that's a big difference to how we might see script in the more classical approach, which is in a very subtle way, being invited to believe that we don't really have that many options to change and so on. And this idea of, it's equally also to the other one to account for that mutuality and shared accountability. So
can I ask a question?
Sure.
I just had I don't know if I had a penny drop moment or a confusion moment, but when you've got the arrow going the opposite way, is that less of showing that you've got an influence on the other person and more of the fact that you made a choice?
I would say it's both. It's both because it's actually, they happen in parallel. So I have a choice to also react differently. I have a choice to account differently for myself, for the other one, for the environment and the world out there. That's why I use the word potency in this model, because it can be also slightly frightening, saying, oh, so it's also on me. Oh, interesting. It's also on me to choose differently. And of course, there can be a slight fright, but it's also liberating, when worked through in the right environment and so on. So that's the powerful message within this different way of looking at script. So it's I would say, and it's both, Sparkles.
Okay, thank you. Really helpful.
I'm sorry.
I find that with that that you've just said there, hopeful, and yes, I have a part to play. If I think about myself as an adult, that rings really true, and that's really powerful and helpful. But I still feel that saying the same thing about a little baby or a child, it seems somehow to disregard the truth of that child's lack of potency. And it really, I've got to be really honest, it really gets my back up, as though there's as though the little child had responsibility to not be damaged or not be hurt or not form the script it did. And it smacks of just sort yourself out. It's that in counselling and in therapy, that is just the worst thing that you should ever say to somebody. You decided it for yourself. And in the child, relating to the child, the infant, that it seems like there's something missing here. Feels like that to me.
Change therapist.
I think it's just the choice of words decision, because in TA theory, even though they use that word decision, they don't mean it in the same way as an adult making a decision. It's unconscious, it's pre-verbal often, and it's maybe conclusions. I don't know, there's probably a better word, but I think when you hear that word decision, you need to interpret it differently, really, if they're talking about children, or especially really young children.
Yeah, it's the little professor, isn't it? The little professor survival strategy is the way I look at it. What do I do to feel safe with these people I'm with?
And the little professor might not exist when this was happening. It might have been pre that, you know, you might be talking.
Yeah, it might be pre that. But going back to the television example, you know, when he said that one of the twins picked up the remote control, I went, well, he didn't touch the television.
Yeah.
Oh, it was before remote controls.
And Mary, I hear you. I hear what you're saying, and the shared, not equal responsibility is really key here. This is not an invitation to be almighty and always powerful, even less so when you're growing up. So it's a shared responsibility, but not an equal one. And this principle also invites us in the different roles that we play, not to believe that we have equal responsibility. It's a shared one. But even in our work as, you know, in organizations, in counseling rooms, in therapy rooms, there must be an awareness about the unequal responsibility, but it needs to be an ethical and owned one from a mutual positive regard, which changes a lot the environment and changes a lot the permissions, I think, that are equally exchanged perhaps in between the two of us. So I wouldn't put an equal and invite us growing up to believe that we had that many choices. And at the same time, the choices that we've made through those developing the ego states that were taking place, whatever we want to call them, were the best choices that we did make, because we are here.
I think
there is some strength there. Yes, Paul.
Yeah, when we think about the development of a child's script, that's not developed in a co-creative context.
Right. That's quite nutshell. That stands out for me, Paul. Thank you. Yeah.
So
that's a good comment. Yeah.
When we're born, for the first 6 months, we can hardly move. We can't communicate with language. We don't have language, and we are done to when we rely completely on the caregivers for our survival.
That's what I've struggled with the co-creative idea.
Okay.
And infancy, it just doesn't, for me, I just can't mesh the two at all. It just doesn't.
Yeah. So there is a significant power differential when we are young that there isn't when we're adults.
Yes. Like I say, for adults, this I find beautiful, but it doesn't seem to fit if I go back to looking at infancy or young childhood. Yeah.
Okay. So if you look at it from a perspective that the child, you, I, all of us made meaning from our experiences when we were small. Yeah. And whatever meaning we made to our experiences, it was done, as somebody's already said, in the context of physis and our inbuilt will to survive. So when we didn't get our need met in whatever way it was, we had to make meaning from it. And we were really clever. Babies are really clever because they find the ways of getting whatever they can get towards getting the need met. Yeah. So I think you're right, Mary. You got a choice between the devil and the deep blue sea. You choose the deep blue sea. Yeah. Or you choose without language and without real experience. We were all good at getting what we could to get our needs met, even if it was not what we really wanted. So we made do, we survived, we got through it, and we lived to fight another day. And actually, I'm really thankful for my script because it generated a lot of good things for me. But as I've got older, that script has limited what I could do. It limited my choices. And I think what the really good thing about what Tudor and Summers were saying about the script matrix is it gives us permission to change our script. And they have it from, they talk about it from a constructivist point of view, and they talk about our script being a narrative. It's a story that we tell ourselves about ourselves and others in the world. And we can change that script. We can change that story, which you can do through therapy, or you can do it not through therapy. You can do it by making redecisions. You can make it by changing the story, looking at it from a bit different perspective, from the perspective we now have with a lot more experience and a lot more power. And we can reflect on our childhood and why we do things and why we have a script that says, don't ask a stupid question. Yeah. Because actually, what does it matter if it is a stupid question? Who decides whether it's a stupid question or not? Yeah. And if we want to know something, it's okay to ask. Because that should be part of a teacher's response. So it is about how we construct our script and what stories we told ourselves when we were little, from how we made meaning from our experiences. But the really good thing is that it gives us permission to change it.
As ever, my head is buzzing to about 8 different places at the same time. But listening to the conversation that's happening and thinking of that, honouring the script and acknowledging the positives that we've got from it, I can really feel this sense of the mutuality in what we're all doing to each other. And thinking of a particular client at the moment who's 20-year-old male, and this sense of the shared responsibility and change in power, because his parents are still his parents and he could still be living within his, well, I have to do what my parents are saying, but there's almost a loosening. And looking at the points when he then makes a change, and I think it was Traian who said something about it's the impact of the other. So we make a choice, we might do something differently. The then impact on the other you can almost see him go back into script because I've caused something here. My parents are unhappy, but actually it's giving a sense of, well, this is what change is. And I have the capacity to do this and it's okay. So yeah, I don't know if that, yeah. As I said, my head is buzzing, but I've got a sense of the parallels being freeing. So that choice, instead of, to coin that word, being done to.
Yeah. And I think this is what the big difference in this model with the co-creative script invites us to reflect on, and offers the permissions that we give ourselves also to think differently and have more power in the world that we're living in. And Paul, you were touching on the positive aspects of script, and I think this is key because learning TA and reading TA, there's sometimes this idea that there is one script, that sometimes there is the negative part of the way we choose to live, which is script. Well, to Paul's point, if we're thinking that the script is a narrative that's constantly evolving and recreated, how many scripts do we have, and what's positive and negative? It's full of options, and it can differ depending on or where we want to be, or the context we're at, and so on. And this not only allows, this perspective not only allows a different absorption or looking at things in the present moment differently, but it allows also for us to bring in the past and view it differently in the present moment. So the idea of present-centeredness and being aware and noticing what's triggering different behaviors from our past is an invitation from a place of allowing, not from getting rid of. And this is a key concept, key idea of the narrative aspects of the co-created script.
When you talk about us having the ability to change our script, that's something that I'm struggling to get my head around, because I guess I've always viewed it as once we have enough of an understanding of our script and we recognize when we've been triggered into that script response, we can then choose to respond differently. Is that what you mean by changing your script? Because you're choosing to respond differently?
Yes.
Or am I not getting it?
You're choosing to respond in a sense that it's mutual beneficial. So yeah, we have the choice to respond differently. What I was pointing towards is it doesn't mean that we move out of script or we're script free, because you might hear this phrase in TA every now and then. It's actually, we're choosing a different narrative which invites us or offers us more options to react differently. So I really want to emphasize the richness of this narrative and the many places that this can lead to. Because thinking of moving out of script is equally as deterministic as believing that it was something done to us, or even in the present moment, it's something done to us. So this means that, well, I don't really have a choice. And this is why co-creativity is challenging at times, because sometimes it's more comfortable to be done to. And I'm thinking also in the work that I do in organizations, every now and then I do encounter situations where it is more comfortable to be done to than own the mutuality of change. And that's the very simple and complex challenge that working co-creatively is about.
And I think if we make a different decision and respond in a different way, I think whether a script changes or not depends on whether that behavior is at a social level or whether it's from a psychological place. So Sarah, you were talking about in your introduction to yourself, to us, about having difficulty in exposing yourself in a group, yeah? And you did it beautifully. Yeah. So you've learned that you can do it, and it will be impacting on a script belief that you're not allowed to do it or something. And what you generated is a different neural pathway that takes courage, but every time you do it, it takes less courage. Mm. So what you are doing in a way is going through the process that Graham Summers talks about how to address your script decisions, if you want, or beliefs, because your initial script response was not to be visible, yeah, not to expose yourself, and that was safe, and that was it was an unconscious defense, yeah, because you weren't risking yourself, there was no possibility of you feeling shamed or whatever, and you became aware of it through your TA journey, and you took the courageous step to bring it into your consciousness, and you decided to challenge it. So instead of it being an unconscious defensive, you noticed it was a conscious defensiveness. And then when you addressed it, it became a conscious, non-defensive response, which was to do what you've done today. And the more you do that, eventually, without you being aware of it, it'll turn to a non-conscious, non-defended response.
That is an outstanding way of explaining it to me.
Okay. So we move from it being an unconscious, which means defended, yeah, an unconscious defensive, yeah, to a conscious defensive. We become aware of our defense. We address it and challenge it by a conscious non-defensive act, behavior, which is what you did today. And when you do that repeatedly, it becomes a non-conscious process to be non-defensive. And that's where your script changes. Because script by definition is non-conscious.
So it becomes an unconscious, what was the last step?
An unconscious non-defensive.
Non-defensive.
Yeah. So it's a non-conscious positive part of our script. Yeah. Because we're not inhibited.
And roughly how many times does that behaviour have to be repeated to forge the robust new neural pathway?
Well, I'm about 8 years of therapy in, 4 years of training, still working on it.
There's something in, I think it's like sports psychotherapy or music psychotherapy, and they talk about how many times we have to practice to do something. I can't remember the figure, but it's like something like
10,000 hours to become a genius at something, but there is something about forging new neural pathways, and I'm getting 6 weeks at the back of my mind because I love the neuroscience. There's something about if you create a habit and do it for 6 weeks, so I'm not sure how many times that would be a pathway firing, it then forges a new pathway and a new habit, which is what we're talking about, is getting that new neural pathway. Hebb's rule, whatever's fired together wires together. Firing out of sync fails to link. So once you start challenging that firing, through that beautiful process you so wonderfully described that made a great deal of sense. But it was just, I was just thinking for my clients, you know, because quite often you get the situation where they make a conscious defensive move, then it becomes a conscious non-defensive, and then suddenly, I use that great analogy, they walk along that street and put 2 feet back in the hole they used to do. Instead of, I mean, admittedly, they then get out the hole quicker, instead of going down the new street that hasn't got a hole in at all, because they've made that change. So yeah, I was just trying to work out for clients, you know, how many times that repetition needed to be.
And I do think it depends on how defended it was in the first place.
Yeah, definitely.
So that might have just so the next question that was in my head, Traian, I think you said something about we are not necessarily working within a co-creative script as that really young infant. So then I'm going through developmental stages and thinking, so at what point would we consider being to have capacity to be able to operate in that mutual space? And I've gone, I mean, I have 2 teenagers, but I'm now sitting here and thinking, oh, so actually all of these boundary moments that are going on, is this them trying to find their co-creativity of changing something? It's quite fascinating at where that comes in, you know, because we might say, oh gosh, yeah, you know, these teenagers, they're pushing these boundaries, they're doing this, they've gone off the rails, but actually have they now got some sense of how that they are deciding they no longer want to function? So yeah, another little part of my head that's now.
Of course, they don't actually wait until the teenage, do they? They do it at 2.
True.
They do the defiant responses at 2.
The first time they say no,
I won't.
and
I'm not.
toddle away from
Yeah.
you. Yeah.
Mhm. So they're doing this bit on the scrape matrix. They're challenging, yeah, what's being done to them, and obviously there's a response from the parents at that point. So once children get some sort of power and mobility and language, and they can stamp the feet and say no, they're actually challenging the script.
Yes.
I think there is a level of realistic assessment of what they're able to do. So I think it's a process of emerged co-creativity, I would say, and that's a hard reality and a very healthy one, because they need foster and care, they need attention and so on, and it is different when this mutuality is acknowledged, whatever the age. So you were saying 2, Paul, we were saying 14, 15, 16. The mutuality aspect is the same. So how do we respond to a 2-year-old who wants to test, the mutuality of the relationship? Because we could say, we could use one arrow heading their way, and it creates a certain type of experience and future script, or we could say, we could reflect on the mutuality of it and be more open how that in the moment impacts us. And what's the environment saying about that moment? Of course, it is complex, because we also need to be in a good place and so on. But the mutuality, the reflecting on mutuality, I think it's really key in all of this.
Of course.
Actually, Paul, that was really useful when you said going back to the 2-year-old, because what's Tronic's thing called, where there's the mother who doesn't, who's engaged with the baby, is it straight face or something? And actually the power of that child and how it uses every aspect of itself to engage. Yes, thank you.
And I think we also need to forget that it also depends on how much adult the parents can access.
That's important.
Yeah, and we are, you guys are therapists, and I'm sure you come across people who have had really, really terrible childhoods where the parents have been drug addicts or drink or alcoholics, and have not been taken care of, and have been taken away and put in foster homes and things like that. So our experiences of children's experiences have a vast range of possibilities. And every child that survives has survived.
I like the idea of the two-way thing of, and I've not really thought about it before, of the child are both having impact on each other's script.
They do. We do. They do. We do. Yeah. And Hazel, I was thinking of your question about the number of times, and I think there might not be an answer to the number. There's another thing that's happening in that process, though, which is we learn that change is possible. So what Paul very nicely described as the process, then we actually, very deep inside of us, we realize that change is possible, that an alternative is possible, no matter where we apply that to. Becoming better trainers, becoming better parents, becoming better friends, becoming better people to ourselves. So there is this almost meta process that's taking place then, which is beyond a single change or a single moment.
I still stick with the little child, and where we kind of gain some level of power in which we could begin to make what I would call real decisions. Because I know that certain upbringing, an upbringing of constant stress will cause the brain to develop differently. Mm-hmm. So could it not be said that that was done to the child? I suggest that it can. Mm-hmm. If the child is brought up, for whatever reason, children in Afghanistan, in Ukraine right now, mm-hmm. they're going to have that constant stress. It's not necessarily to do with the parents, of course, but that is the experience. So those children don't have a damn choice. Correct. And that's the level of difficulty I find. I find talking to adults to cast it back. That child could have made a choice. It could have chosen not to be damaged. Or I really find that really difficult.
Yeah, Mary, would it help if it's not that the child has a choice whether or not they're damaged or not. It's if you take that child in Ukraine, for example, and that living with that constant fear and stress, it's internally on a completely unconscious level. They're choosing how they respond to that stress. How do I keep myself mentally safe? And it might not be in a constructive way, and it might not be in a healthy way, or it might be, but it's completely unconscious.
Yes, that's what script is.
Yeah, but you're saying you can't get, you're struggling with the idea that they're making a choice, but it's an unconscious choice.
It's not that I struggle with them making a choice. It's almost as though co-creativity is saying at any moment you can choose to feel differently. You can choose to not be in script, but as a child you're building it.
Yeah. So
it's almost like as a child you could choose not to build the script that you're building.
No, you don't. You will, as a child, you will respond and you will make meaning from your experiences, and you will make a decision that will be around how can I survive, how can I get my needs met at some level. Yeah. So we, like you said, kids are really good at finding the best of the worst, the best of the options. Yeah. Even if it's not nice. Yes. So they'll get what they can get in order to survive. And yeah, I think the co-creative script is more about as we grow older and we get more power, we do have opportunities. Yeah. Yeah.
As an adult looking at it, I find it really hopeful and really beautiful and really something to get teeth into and work with. It's the flight from what was to what can be, and it allows a what can be rather than it's just going to be the same, and that's beautiful. But when I try and overlay it on childhood and how children form, it just, for me, it breaks down at that.
But it's when we form our script, it's not co-create. It is created in relationship with big people. It's not created in a co-created way because there's not a shared responsibility the same. It's not present-centered. It's not we-ness. Yeah, it's a symbiosis.
Right, thanks for explaining that. I know I keep coming back to that, but it's something that I'm really struggling with, so I'd really like to be able to kind of get it into my mind. So thanks for going over that again.
That's okay.
I think that's really helpful what you just said about bringing the word symbiosis in. So it's created in that kind of symbiosis, and then as we individuate, we have a choice as to whether we stay in it or not.
Yeah, and in co-creativity, we're not in a symbiosis. We're in a healthy symbiosis, and a healthy symbiosis is when sometimes in my marriage with my wife, sometimes she looks after me and sometimes I look after her. So I use her child ego state sometimes, and sometimes she uses mine, and I use my parent, and sometimes she does. So it's a healthy symbiosis because the symbiosis swaps from one to the other. Yeah, because we can rely on one another and share the responsibility.
It's a give and take, but it's a healthy and a mutual give and take whenever it's needed from each other.
Yeah.
And that, what you just said, Paul, has taken me to that sense of present-centeredness. So working in the present, and I don't know if this gives a different view, Mary, but I've got the sense that in co-creative, we're working in the here and now with what is past. So,
Yes.
yeah.
So in when we're in our integrating adults, we are connected with we're in full contact with our past. So we can choose either from our experiences in the past, be it from parent or child ego states, or we can decide and choose to do something completely different, because that brings us to a non-defensive place, because we've no experience. We can't predict what's going to happen. So Sarah couldn't predict what was going to happen to her when she was vulnerable this morning and shared that with us. And that was very courageous. Okay. And I'm conscious of the time, and I'm actually conscious that we're not sticking to our plan. Which is great.
I wanted to mention that. So how about if we take 8 minutes until past? So for a tea break, coffee break, or whatever break we
Tea
need.
break.
See you at past.
Yeah. Okay, see you in a few minutes.
Before we go on with an invitation for an activity in a breakout room, I wanted to mention something, and thanks, Mary, for bringing this topic yet again, because I think it's an important one. You know, in co-creativity, one of the key concepts is integrating adult. So unless that's available, and the integrating adult is quite a complex state of development, then it's really hard to apply co-creative principles fully. So we need to take that also into account. How ready are we to live these principles, and not ready in the sense of prepared, but also from a developmental and biological perspective, you know, we need to be at a certain moment. Okay. So Paul, do you want to do the intro for the breakout room?
Yeah, sure. Well, our plan's gone to pot, really, because you guys have joined in really well, and what we were going to ask you to do in the breakout rooms, you've already done. So it's great. So we're going to invite you to do something more positive. So we're going to invite. We've been talking or hinting at that. Certainly with a co-creative script, and actually in a Burnian script as well, although it's not really talked about. I mean, script is about the story we tell ourselves, and we have script beliefs. Yeah. So our script is based on the script beliefs, and of course, all our beliefs are not negative. So we have positive script beliefs. We must have, because if we didn't have, we wouldn't have got here. We would have given up. Yeah. So we must have positive script beliefs. And one of the ways to begin to access those may be through attributes that we have about ourselves, or attributes that we have been given. Yeah. Because kids are given up. Kids get attributes about the positive bits about them, don't they? That they're clever, that they're pretty, yeah, whatever. There will be positive aspects that parents give, positive attributes that parents give to children, and that some other people, other big people give positive attributes, don't they? You know, sports coaches says that Fred's a really good footballer, yeah, or Julie's a really good tennis player. So we do get positive attributes, and we will hold those at some conscious or non-conscious or semi-conscious or partly conscious part of ourselves. And those are the things that helped us to be defiant and helped us to survive. So we're going to invite you to go into breakout groups and see what you can identify as parts of the positive parts of your script. What are the positive script beliefs about yourself and others in the world? And just see what you come up with.
Paul, sorry, it's Amy. So thinking of intention and impact, that I was following you until you said that your parents might give you. A parent may give what they believe a positive aspect, and it ends up being something negative. So not to speak in tongues. So Amy, you're ever so diligent.
Yeah.
I can turn that into something negative. I have to work really hard to get what I achieve.
Yeah, that is a in TA terms, that is a potential negative aspect of attributes. Yeah. That we can take them on. They become, we want to be prettier or better at football because we want to please our parents. Yeah. So, and it depends. It's a bit like personality disorders. You know, it's to what extreme you can take them. Yeah.
Thanks.
But I remember my parents always saying, "What a clean boy I always was." And I don't know where that came from, but that's one thing that I remember from my childhood. I was a very clean and well mannered. Yeah. So they are positive aspects that I have about myself. Yeah. So we're going to invite you to go into group. We'll just a random selection of 3s or 4s, and just
4s mainly.
Yeah. Just see where you get to. See what positive parts of your script you can identify.
And we're going to have about 15 minutes for that.
Is that okay?
All clear? Okay. The positive aspects of script, and what did come out of your discussions? What was new? What was not new?
I wasn't convinced that the things that my family would have stroked as positive that I consider positive. So I, for example, was told I was no trouble, but I don't think that's a good script message. I reject it. I want to be trouble. So I'm not sure I got my positive script messages from my family of origin, although I do have positive script messages.
Right. So are you prepared to share some positive script messages?
Actually, I probably did get them from my family of origin, but in a different way. I think I have a lot of anti-script. I think, for example, I think I push back a lot against the positive script, against the script messages for my family. I'm quite independent. I'm happy to be different to my family, and I think that's something I came by anti-script rather than by.
I think it doesn't matter where it comes from. It's a what I'm hearing is a positive belief that you don't have to conform. Yeah.
And what's giving you in your life now?
Say this again.
What is it giving you in your life now as a resource, as an ability, as a...
Okay, so I'm not sure it's unambiguously good, because I can sometimes rack it into okayness. But I think I do have a general sense of just, I'll be okay, whatever. Sometimes a bit vitriolically, but it does give me a resource to kind of just push back, to just take care of myself. And that's not unambiguously good, but it is useful to me a lot of the time.
Being assertive is important. Good. Thanks for sharing. What else? What other positive aspects, or whatever came in through your discussions that you want to share? Questions or thoughts?
For me, the caringness, I was told that I was a good carer and that I should care for when I was younger, my parent. And as I grew up, I saw that as a noose or as a weight. And I wanted to really reject it because, you know, I wanted to be more independent and stand on my own 2 feet and not have to care after someone. But in the process of training and therapy, a lot of therapy, I realized that it is actually a superpower that I do have. So therefore, I'm using it to help and support people that I choose and they choose me, instead of helping the person officially that I was meant to help. And so therefore, me severing ties with that person meant that I could be more autonomous with my caring.
It's a great example of transitioning from unhealthy symbiosis to a healthy symbiosis of your own choice.
Yeah, exactly. So when you mentioned symbiosis earlier, I was like, oh my gosh, that's a light bulb moment for me, because that's definitely, I felt that as an adult, that I was still in a symbiosis relationship and needing to cut ties, even though it was difficult, but it meant that I was free to then be able to choose and care for people that I wanted to care for.
Yeah. Nice, thank you.
So somebody in the group I've just been in has asked me to share something I shared at the end of our session, and that was I kind of fell into co-creativity when I started my training, and I realized that what I was doing was I was drawn to colleagues and other trainees that had attributes that I didn't have, that I wanted. So I'll use the word hanging out, forming bonds and attachments with people who were gentle, nurturing, and able to express their needs without the anger that I was carrying. And it was a real kind of light bulb moment that actually the script I'd got, I could actually alter by attributing and taking on board the injunctions that they were showing me, and this be perfect, be strong driver could be softened by interjecting those trainees around me that had the things that I felt I was missing.
Can I just respond to Hazel first? Because it sounds like what you were doing was expanding your experience. So you were expanding your frame of reference, yeah, to enable a change, yeah, and accounting of that some people are nurturing and some people are helpful, yeah. Go on, Sparkles.
Well, I was going to say that I won't swear because you're going to be recorded, but I've got this energy that will push people away. Or when I was particularly when I was younger, but I've now learned how to sort of turn that to be much more positive. So I realized the part of my script that kept people a bit away because I was a bit quirky and a bit different, but then I've learned how to be happier in that quirkiness and actually make connection with others rather than push away, if that makes sense. So it is quite nice how we can rewrite. I struggled a bit to find the positive things from childhood. I can find lots of positive things that maybe I've spanned the script in later years. I don't know if that helps.
What did you say last?
I don't know if that was helpful. Sorry, I was a discount.
Yeah, well, it helped me. I don't know about the rest.
Yeah, it's a good, nice story.
Yeah.
I love that concept, Sparkles, of spinning the script, and I even felt the energy in how you said it.
Thanks.
Yeah. So many resources in our script. So many.
I think I've got one it's been a backwards and forwards. It's been like a push me, pull you. My mum used to comment how pretty I was when I was a little kid. And then bullies at school said how ugly I was. So what she said was kind of a counter to the bullies. And then in my adult life, it was a double-edged sword, because I think I put too much weight on the value of appearance, and then found that in romantic attraction perhaps would find people who were only bothered about my appearance, and then I'd feel sad. But I moved on in a career to be a performer, which was very much about appearance. So I that is my job. I'm a stilt walker, and it's all about show and appearance. So I'm really good at that, and that's a crazy job which I've really enjoyed, and a lot of other people have really enjoyed too. So it's the kind of flow through life of that.
Yeah, acknowledging that narrative that got you where you are right now. Because I wanted to ask you, so what did that bring? And you just answered, the joy that you feel. So yeah, what you do. Thanks for sharing. So what else crossed your mind through the dialogue, through the co-created dialogue that you had in the breakout rooms?
I'll contribute a little bit if I may. I spoke about how a bit like Paul, I was told I was a good boy, a good clean boy, well behaved, but also on top of that, I was told how clever I was, and a little bit different to some of the experiences of some of the other participants on the course today. I was fortunate that I didn't have too many challenges to learning or education. I found that quite easy, really, and it was a benefit to me. In a script sense, I embraced the idea that I was clever and learning was easy, and so I progressed through my career and careers. I actually moved careers, changed careers a couple of times with confidence. So that was a positive aspect of that script message. But when I started therapy and decided to take a career break and start my training, I started to reject this idea of myself being clever, and reframe that a little bit. And I turned my back on it in some ways, because I wasn't comfortable with what that meant for me. And it took a bit of time for me to finish my training, get my diplomas and essays done, and to actually start practicing. And I was kind of playing with that a little bit rather than owning it. And actually only over the last 4 months or so, I felt quite a change in me, where I've started to embrace the intellectual rigor of being a therapist in transactional analysis, and owning, I suppose, the my curiosity and my capacity to learn about that. And so I suppose a bit like Julianne described about her caring side of things, I don't see that quite as a symbiosis explanation. I've just been reflecting on it, and I wonder whether that's more of a kind of like from a scripty message to be clever for the sake of academia and to get a good job that earns lots of money, to now it being something more autonomous for me. That's how I think I understand it. But I'd be interested to hear what you guys think.
Well, Neil, I think you're sharing an important. First of all, thanks for sharing, because I think it's intimate, it's personal, and it's describing a lot of what we're fostering through this idea of co-creativity, because it's the essence of not forgetting what got us here, and not leaving along the way what resources we learned to use, and describing what perhaps was limiting to a degree growing up, being thorough, being attentive, being willing to go deep in theory. And well, actually there is a trait. So the idea of narrative and it constantly evolving and changing and reflecting on it and playing with it is what makes it valuable, because it allows us to keep with us along the way what still works and what worked, but without the caveats that you were talking about when you moved into therapy, and oh, that's not what I like. But what's happening sometimes is, oh, I don't like that. We're throwing too much of what we don't like, if without this more positive angle to acknowledging our past, being grateful for it, and so on. And I do resonate with your story, not with the same descriptions, because I got different messages growing up, but I could imagine the rebelliousness in me, which took many, many years to learn how to work with it. So similarly, when I got into therapy and so on, and learned about TA, I was still using rebelliousness as a force, which I wasn't really understanding. And it took a bit of time to actually, use it towards my benefit without throwing it away, because I think that's important. And it's still ongoing. So thanks for sharing it. That's a great example of how we evolve and how our narratives evolve.
Thank you, Traian.
That rebelliousness can be self-sabotage as well, can't it? So it's like turning it, not be.
Yeah.
Should be self-serving instead of self-sabotage.
Yes, and rebelliousness has very little to do with how I choose to use it.
Yeah.
That's the strength of the assertiveness that we heard about, and the thoroughness, and the joyfulness, and taking care of others, and so on. Where are you, Paul? Oh, here you are. The joys of virtualness. I need to look up for you. So how do we want to move this forward? We're getting close to past. Anything that's on your mind that you wanted to share, or?
Are you talking to me or everybody?
To you,
Oh,
Paul.
okay, okay.
Yeah, to you.
I'm that important, am I?
Yeah.
No, I'm just wondering where you're at. We've covered quite a lot around co-creative script in a general view and the general exploration with the main parts of it. I mean, there's a lot more to co-creative script than we've been talking about. There's a lot more connections to other aspects of co-creativity. We've mentioned integrating adults, particularly. And I think there's lots of connections to the main parts of co-creativity, to the we-ness, because if we're working on our script and changing our script, the best way to do it is in we-ness, because we need some support and some help and some understanding and some compassion. So it's difficult for us to change our script, to develop our script more positively on our own, because we've got great self-sabotaging mechanisms in place to keep our old script in place. So it's really helpful to make that development with somebody else that we feel safe with, and that will share the responsibility and support us.
Paul, I'm trying to cast my mind back to the diagram. And I can't remember on the diagram whether the adults were the symbol of integrating adults. I don't know why I'm thinking about that.
No, don't be. So I mean, what Children Summers wrote co-creative TA before Keith Tudor wrote about integrating adults.
Okay.
So the script matrix that they have is not an integrating adult script matrix. So so okay. So I have a model with a script with integrating adults in the mix. Yeah.
Across each of the packs, so the male, the female, and
no, not the script helix, the script matrix. Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah. And Keith and myself are doing a workshop on integrating adults. I'll tell you when it is if I can find it. I think it's in May sometime. So we'll be bringing. I think it may be the 5th of May. I think. But we will be looking at how we've developed the concept, how the concept of integrating adult has changed, and how we can look at it in terms of a healthy symbiosis in script, yeah, and how it helps us to make choices. And certainly Keith has developed integrating adult more, and I've used it, and we've had some discussions about other aspects of integrating adult that Keith didn't write about originally. So that will be sort of an updated version of integrating adult from the two of us.
Great. So I was thinking of that diagram, and then the discussions that we've had in our breakout rooms. I've almost got me or the client, the person who's doing the work, looking at what options there are, choices, with the integrating adult there,
yeah,
but then not necessarily that those others would be, because they may not be in that space.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it comes back to, we can't force anybody else to be co-creative with us. We can only invite and provide the opportunity. And we've got to enable that to happen. We've got to find ways of being non-defensive and present-centered. Because if we can't, there's no hope in hell for a co-creative relationship to build up. So it's about, we can learn to be non-defensive and provide those opportunities. But it's like this morning, you guys have been great because you've joined us in this less non-defensive, less defensive place, yeah. And hopefully you've experienced a bit more about what it's like to have the courage and not be criticised, and be welcomed and be okay for who you are. And creating that co-creative space isn't an instant. It doesn't happen instantly. It takes quite a while to develop that and develop the trust and the safety and the courage to be non-defensive. So yeah, it's certainly not something that just happens.
I don't know whether this fits with the weeness, but I know that without connections and strong relationships, I wouldn't be where I am now. And I had to have people, I had to let people walk alongside me. So to grow.
Yeah. And it's really, you need a lot of courage to challenge your script.
Yeah.
You need a lot of courage to choose to be non-defensive. And the more we do it, the easier it becomes.
you can ask my husband about me challenging my not good enough script, because I went from not spending anything on myself to actually I'm worth it. And so now come Christmas and birthdays, everybody goes, well, we don't know what to buy you anymore, because if you want it, you now just buy it, because that real fear of scarcity is no more.
So there's a positive belief there now that you are worth it.
Yeah, and also I'm going to survive. It doesn't matter whether I'm working, whether the money's coming in. I know I'm going to be okay. And that was a massive script change for me. Yeah, I think sometimes my husband wishes I'd go back to the alternative.
But yeah, so we do have positive aspects of our script. We have positive script beliefs. And of course, we play rackets and we run rackets and play games to reinforce the positive aspects of our script, just like we do rackets and games to support the negative parts. So,
may I ask a question, please? It's a practical one. I've just had a quick scan through the dates for the workshops for this series, and I don't see one relating to the workshop that you were talking about. Are you doing a separate workshop?
It's not posted yet.
It's not posted. We only post them up about 3 or 4 weeks in advance.
Okay, because I can see in section 3 there's something for the 24th of May, or are those just general?
The 24th is the one on transferences. Yeah.
Yeah.
Depending on how we schedule them, we might have put one more in advance, but usually we go for 3 to 4 weeks. For example, we're doing something, I think, on April 12th, Paul and I.
That's on the board.
It's not there yet, is it?
It's there, but you can't book it yet.
Oh, book it, and it doesn't have a description yet. So we're building as we go. That's, I think, the main message.
There's one on the 23rd, isn't there, Venus?
Yes. It was just that whenever you referenced you're doing a workshop, Paul, I thought, well, hey, I must check my diary to make sure I'm free so that I can jump in.
Same here.
But I couldn't see the one you're referring to. Okay, thank you very much.
That's okay.
Are you looking for the one in May, Paul?
Yeah, I'm looking for the integrating adult one, and I've certainly got one on the 5th of May.
These easy to find on the UCARTA website, are they?
It should be, yeah. If you just go into the links, the way that you've got to this. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm conscious that Traian's got a work call at past, so Traian may need to disappear. So we invite you to take a moment and check out with us and the group, and what is it you're taking away?
I've really enjoyed this. It's been really good, and thank you. I'm going to watch what's been and hopefully attend what's coming.
I found it really, really beneficial. Thank you both. Particularly, I know I kept going over it because it was a great big issue for me, and clarifying how if there's symbiosis, you can't have co-creativity going on, and without integrated adults, you can't have co-creativity going on. So that really helps me define it and understand and get over that block that I had. This really opens a path for me, it feels today. Brilliant, thank you.
Thank you for sharing, Mary, and being open and present.
Yeah, the first time I saw the script with the two ways, I was really confused, but I think I've got a much deeper understanding of it today, and I can actually see how really useful and benefit that concept is, particularly in relation to making choices or making the meaning that we've made is a two-way thing. Yeah, just thank you very much, and I'm coming to the Venus one next week, so
okay,
I want to do more on this, so thank you.
Brilliant.
Thank you, Traian and Paul. This is really I've never heard of this from before today, so I'm really grateful and happy that I came on, and will seek out others that you've done, and yeah, join on to those to really learn a lot more about it. So thank you everyone for today.
There is a book on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Co-Creative TA by Graham and Keith. If you're interested, it's not always the easiest thing to read, but the book is really good because there's like a dialogue between the two of them. So it's a really the chapters themselves are not necessarily the best to give you the theory, but it's the interplay and the conversation after them that's really good.
Oh, sorry.
Just to say thank you for today. I enjoyed it. I love co-creative TA, so and it was nice to have a chance to come along because I find it difficult to come along to anything in the evening. Daytimes are better for me because of childcare. So this was a nice opportunity. Obviously, you've got the recordings, but it's nice to be actually here in person.
Thanks, Robert.
Thanks. Yeah, and it is different to be here in person then.
I'd like to echo that. Actually, it's been lovely having a daytime slot because I'm busy in the evenings with clients and then can't come. So it's lovely having a daytime slot. So thank you very much for putting that on.
Yeah. Good to have you here.
I've really enjoyed it today, and it's just whet my appetite to go and read more and bury my head in articles and maybe get the book.
Yeah, thanks Traian and Paul. It's been really good. Kind of stumbled across it via an email, so I'm really glad I was able to attend today. So I normally be working. Worked last night till 5 in the morning, so it was worth it was worth getting up for to attend. So yeah, really thank you to everybody. It's been a really good experience.
Good.
I'll echo that, Paul. Thank you to everybody. And what I love about this each session is it's almost, I'm sure it may well be a frustration for you guys when you say, oh, well, yeah, the plan is no longer, but there is something of a beauty in that it's gone the way that kind of the group's shaped. And something that I've noticed is the more I started doing the sessions in a thinky place, trying to really almost challenging the classical, and the more that I immerse into the group, it's becoming far more experiential. So thank you, everybody. It's lovely.
Yeah,
thanks for saying that, Emmy.
Yeah, thanks, Emmy.
And that's the joy to us also. So no, the plan is optional, like Paul and I would like to say. Paul, you were saying something.
Yeah, I think one of the things with co-creativity is it's the process that's important. Yeah. Yes. So I think if you pay attention to the process and not the content. Yeah. And yeah, we had a plan, and we always have a plan, but it's just there in case.
I'd like to just echo really what so many people have said before, expressing gratitude to everybody, yeah, it's whet my appetite, and I'd like to just thank you for pulling together these ideas and what feels so intuitive actually about a way of doing therapy in a mutually explorative and creative way, and how you've put a framework around that is really helpful and useful. So thank you for that.
Thank you too. Thank you for coming.
I've really enjoyed this morning. Thank you both, and thank you everybody. I was a bit apprehensive at the beginning, not really knowing what I was jumping into, but I am really, really, really glad I did. I'm quite gutted that all the other ones are in the evening because I can't do evenings either. I will be watching recordings and definitely watching my emails a bit more closely in case there are any more daytime ones. But yeah, thank you all. Really enjoyed it. and feel like I actually have a bit more understanding. Winning.
Well, you opened the mic for quite all of us, Sarah. So good for you.
Thank you, Sarah.
I've really valued the co-creation in the moment that happened today. So just echoing again what other people have said, both in terms of the way you, Paul and Traian, make this come alive. So it stops being theory for me, stops being a book, because I'm not very good with books or academic articles. You know, it's kind of what mean, again, co-creation in the moment, what meaning has this got, and how I and the rest of us are taking it on. And I'm also really excited by, so I'm looking up the 5th of May, the fact that throughout you've both, this is also just a point in time, and that you, Paul and Traian, say of itself it is evolving. Yeah, and that is what I also find exciting. So thank you again.
I mean, the evolving nature of it is partly why we're doing this series with Keith and Graham, because they want it to evolve. They're not precious about what they wrote in 2000.
No.
It was a start, and
know.
really excited about how it's progressing and evolving.
They're definitely living the principles that they write about, you know, even in their evolution and writing as this progresses.
Thank you.
So, are you going to say something, Sparkles? No?
No.
No, you lit up. So.
Oh, sorry, I was pressing a button on my computer. Sorry, and it must
That's
have
okay.
activated
That's
it.
So yeah, thanks everybody. I mean, these sessions are only as good as you make it.
True.
So if you join in with it, it gets better. So that's been great that you've joined in it, into the spirit, and been with us and in the process. And you know, we learn from these workshops as well. It's, you know, we take things away.
Oh yeah, very much so.
Thank you.
And you've not only not followed the plan, you've heightened the plan and you've enriched it. So thank you for that. It's always a real joy for us.
Yeah.
And thanks, Paul, yet again.
No, thank you.
We enjoy working together.
We do.
I hope that's evident.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay,
well,
guys. Hopefully see you at some more in the future, and enjoy using it.
Thank
Okay.
you. Thank
Bye
you.
all.
Bye.
Bye.